Dear friends, good day and welcome to the second episode of our Learning Bach series. Before we begin, I would like to thank all of you for your numerous comments and questions. Let me assure you that they're all very much appreciated. Now, I began to answer a few of the questions online. I will try to answer the remainder of them during the course of the program. And indeed, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to the channel. We'll all be very grateful for it. This episode is a couple of days late on my schedule, and the reason for it is that a request for another concert came in, and I needed to assemble a program for that particular concert rather quickly. Now, many of you are asking me for advice, so here is a piece of advice. If you are anything like me, it is an absolute waste of time to sit at the piano and try and practice if your mind is somewhere else. I needed to put together that program, so I did that as soon as I could, and then I was able to return to my practice. It is always better to practice an hour less, but with good intention, than just sit here wasting time. In the last episode, we surveyed only the first movement of this great work by Bach, the Capriccio on the departure of his beloved brother. So I thought that today we would have a look at the three movements that are the core of the work. Before me, I have three different editions of the piece. On the left is the old Bach edition. On the right is the one rather heavily edited by Ferruccio Busoni. And in the middle is Bärenreiter's new Bach edition. Now, if we have a look at the old Bach edition, we immediately realize that this music is very contrapuntal and also quite laden with ornaments. If we compare the old Bach edition with the Busoni one, however, we find that all these ornaments are written out in full, and therefore, visually speaking at least, these two pieces of paper don't even look like the same piece of music. By contrast, the Bärenreiter edition is the cleanest of them all. It's very beautifully laid out, and I was able to compare it with the oldest existing manuscript of the piece, which was apparently done by Bach's eldest brother, and I'm happy to report that this Bärenreiter edition is very faithful to this old manuscript, and therefore I decided to use this to learn my music. The second movement of the Capriccio bears the inscription "is a representation of various eventualities which may overtake him in foreign lands." It's a representation basically of all the dangers that the departing brother may encounter during this trip. Incidentally, Bach does not give us a tempo indication. Is this music to be played allegro or andante or adagio? We don't know. However, bearing in mind the instruction that he gives us and also the fact that there are so many ornaments, I am inclined to think that the pace is fairly moderate. The structure of the piece is fairly simple. Virtually the entire piece is based upon the same principal melody, the principal theme, which, to put it simply, sounds like this. But the most important characteristic of this music, of course, is that it's heavily contrapuntal. As I said, the musical material is just this musical phrase. However, the piece itself is made up by the dialogue of the various voices singing virtually the same notes. Already by the second bar of the piece, we hear the same melody but played a fifth below. And so on and so forth. Now, this beautiful counterpoint is repeated three times by Bach, each time a tone below. The first note of the piece is a D, then by bar 6 we have the same music starting on a C. And finally, by bar 11, the same music starting on a B flat. repetition is in fact incomplete and serves as the closing moment of the movement. What I just played for you is a much simplified version because this little fugue, let's call it, is very heavily ornamented, and I will talk about the ornamentation at the end of the episode. Whilst the second movement does not have a tempo indication, and therefore we are somewhat at liberty as to decide how fast or slow to play it, the third movement has a very stark tempo indication. Bach tells us that this music ought to be played adagiosissimo, as adagio as you can manage, and this means indeed very slow. And as soon as we have a look at the music, we discover that this page is very skeletal. There is never more than one note per hand, and we also see that certain bass notes have these little numbers. Now these are for the realization of the basso continuo. Now, the basso continuo is a very complex topic, and I've decided that I will devote a special episode to the realization of the basso continuo. But dealing again with the third movement of the Capriccio, the instruction that Bach gives us is that it's a general lament of his friend, and sure enough, the melodic material of this piece is very lamentous. Very tragic indeed. As I said, I will take care of this particular movement in a special episode dedicated to the basso continuo. The fourth movement, again, doesn't have a tempo indication, but it has a very precise instruction by Bach, who writes, "The friends gather to take leave of him, since they see that he cannot be otherwise, and bid him farewell." Therefore, although Bach doesn't tell us how fast or slow we need to play this music, this being a gathering of people to say goodbye to the departing brother, I think is a fairly festive occasion. And looking at the music, we see that it's very dense, very chordal, rather rambunctious, really. At this point, of course, the narrative of the piece ends, but the piece progresses with two more rather important pieces, the Aria di Postiglione and the great Fuga all'imitazione di Postiglione. Now, those are indeed very important elements of the work, and I will devote an exclusive video to these last two pieces. In today's episode, I would like to talk a little bit about ornamentation, because especially when dealing with Baroque music, ornaments are an essential component of music making, and sometimes they actually completely change the physiognomy of the music. Earlier, I played for you a few excerpts from the second movement of the Capriccio, the so-called representation of various eventualities which may overtake him in foreign lands. And I did so without considering at all the ornamentation. Let me remind you the principal theme of this movement. These are the bare notes. However, Bach gave us a lot more than the bare notes. We look at the music, we see that there is an inverted mordent on the first note. There's an appoggiatura leading into the third note, which in turn has a mordent. The fifth note has another inverted mordent, and so on and so forth. There are so many ornaments, there are too many to list. However, if we try and perform Bach's instructions, more or less we get this. It's very different indeed, and of course when we apply the ornamentation that Bach wrote to the remainder of the voices, we get a flurry of ornamentation. I stopped there mid-phrase because in the Bärenreiter edition, the one that, to the best of my knowledge, most faithfully reproduces the oldest manuscript that we have of this marvelous work by Bach, we find a very strange sign which is not present in the Old Bach edition nor in the Busoni edition. Looking closely, we have a couple of bichords. The first one is G and D, and the second one is A and E flat. But we see that in between these two notes, there's a little slash pointing upwards. Now, I think that this sign represents either a slide or an acciaccatura. It translates into leading into the top tone of this bichord, something similar to this, if I only play the top voice. Into context, it could be something like this. Or, of course, we can choose to place this upward little figure on the downbeat, which would sound like this. Now, of course, I'm only playing slowly to show you the various possibilities. Of course, if we play at a slightly faster tempo, the decision becomes a lot easier because we simply don't have the physical time for the ear to appreciate this melodic little intervention. This shows very well, I think, how important it is to get precise information about the music that we are playing. If we had stopped at the Old Bach edition or the Busoni edition or many others, we would never have found out that Bach actually used this rather archaic ornamental sign in there and other places. And of course, sometimes it is not so easy to decipher these old signs, but there is literature dealing with this, and whenever we can, it is worth to have a look and try to find our own version of the truth. Personally, I always try to be guided by what sounds good to my ears, and hopefully what sounds good to my ears will sound good to your ears also. The last parting comment, the subject of ornamentation is huge, it's very complex, and throughout the 20th century there's been an obsession to try and unify them, to try and regiment them with all sorts of rules and regulations, but in my own personal opinion, for whatever it's worth, it was all a waste of time, because in music, as soon as you formulate a law, there will be a perfectly valid example where that law is not valid. Ornaments are one of these examples, and therefore my little piece of advice, always use your ears. On that note, thank you very much and see you next time.